only mode.
Hi, good morning everybody. We'll just wait another minute or so to let some more people sign in. So this morning we're going to be talking about my favourite Central American country, which is Guatemala. A lot of people refer to Guatemala as the Tibet of Central America, much as the way they refer to Bolivia as the Tibet of South America. And the reason for that is because of the huge indigenous population, and it's still very traditional, and most of the people in Guatemala are descended from the Maya. So I think that's everyone signed in now, so we can get started. For those of you who may not have signed in previously, just a brief overview of who we are and what we do. Ted's been in the business now for over 40 years, working with South and Central America and the Caribbean. He has been pretty much everywhere from the US border all the way down to Antarctica, and all of us working here at the office have either lived or worked or travelled or all of the above in South America as well. So we specialise in tailor-made itineraries to the whole region, as well as doing some small group tours in South America and Mexico and Cuba as well. So Guatemala, the capital of Guatemala is Guatemala City, not a place you want to visit. Unlike the rest of the country, it's not really particularly attractive, but it's a great hub for Central America in general, and obviously for getting in and out of the country. It's a relatively small population for Guatemala, just 16.5 million. And most of those are based in Guatemala City and the towns between Guatemala City and Lake Atitlan. Australians don't need a visa to travel to Guatemala, you get a free 90-day stay as a tourist. And the country is most famous for, of course, the Mayan ruins, definitely volcanoes and lakes, colonial cities, and some of the best markets in Central America. Just to give you a sense of where Guatemala sits in Central America, it is obviously bordered by Mexico, Belize, Honduras and El Salvador, with the capital Guatemala City just down there in the south corner. And a slightly more detailed map. The areas we're going to talk about today, obviously you've got Guatemala City here in the bottom, Antigua, which is about 45 minutes by road, and Lake Atitlan is probably 3 hours or so by road from Guatemala City. We'll also be talking a little bit about Quetzaltenango here and Huehuetenango, which are both highland towns, famous for the indigenous population and some of the best markets in the country. We will also speak obviously about Tikal here in the north, which many of you will have heard of, and then very briefly about this area here, Coban, which is right in the centre of the country, and then Livingston over here as well. So how to get to Guatemala? It's actually very well connected for a Central American country. There are direct flights from Los Angeles, Miami and Dallas-Fort Worth. Qantas actually have through fares to Guatemala City, so you can do an open jaw Sydney via Dallas into Guatemala City and then coming back from, say, Mexico or San Jose or something like that. Within Central America and Mexico, you've got direct flights to Mexico City, San Jose, Managua, Nicaragua, and Panama City as well. And then you can also connect overland from Mexico, either from San Cristobal through to Lake Atitlan or from Palenque across to the Tikal region. And then travelling from Tikal onwards, you can get across to Belize as well. So pretty easy to get in and out of the country, and very easy to incorporate Guatemala into a longer Central American itinerary. There's not really a particularly good or bad time to visit the country. It's a year-round destination, although it's worth noting that the dry season runs from November to April, and the wet season from May to October. Because a lot of Guatemala is quite high in terms of altitude, their winter, which is our summer, can be very cold in the mountains. So also worth mentioning to people travelling between November and April. Antigua is probably the first place that most people visit in Guatemala. It's quite a small little colonial town, only 45 minutes from Guatemala City Airport. So we definitely recommend people arriving into Guatemala overnight in Antigua rather than Guatemala City itself, unless you've got passengers on really, really early flights out, or I guess arriving really, really late at night. Antigua was always the first choice over Guatemala City for accommodation. As you can see, really beautiful colonial architecture, very traditional markets and workshops and so on around the city, so it's great for shopping. The city has undergone many earthquakes in over the years, so you've got a lot of ruined churches. So this lady that you see sitting here is sitting in front of one of the churches that was ruined in the earthquake, and those are dotted right around the city, so it's quite an amazing place to just to stroll around. It's also a really popular place for expats and for people doing Spanish classes as well, so the quality of accommodation, of restaurants and places to go out and eat and so on, it's really quite good. Accommodation is all very boutique-y style and usually in these old colonial buildings. There's a huge choice in Antigua, so you've got everything from very simple kind of 3-star accommodation all the way up to 5-star deluxe, mostly within sort of 5 to 10 minutes of the main plaza. Next up we have Tecatitlan, certainly one of the highlights of Guatemala. It's about 3 hours from Guatemala City Airport, or maybe 2 hours from Antigua, I guess. Reputed to be one of the most beautiful lakes in the world, and it definitely looks that way at sunrise and sunset when you've got the amazing views out over the volcanoes. It's pretty much surrounded on all sides by volcanoes. You can see in this photo here, and then in this one down the bottom here as well. It's pretty much completely encircled, and there's heaps of opportunities there for hiking the volcanoes or climbing, and some of them are quite strenuous as well. So just in terms of the, one moment, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so in terms of the towns around Tecatitlan, you've got Panarchel, which is the main town and access point, not listed on the map here, but it's just here. Very touristy town, massive market, lots of places to stay and eat and drink and shop. It is quite touristy though, so if you've got passengers who are staying more than 2 nights, I would normally recommend taking them out somewhere a little bit further from Panarchel. So you've got accommodation options here in Santa Cruz, in Santiago and San Antonio, and that all just entails a boat transfer from Panarchel across to one of these villages. And then there are also some other boutique properties just dotted around the lake, which are a bit more isolated as well. In terms of touring options, you've got tons of markets in the area. Volcano climbing, which I mentioned, you've got kayaking on the lake. Passengers can just do very gentle walks from village to village along the edge of the lake here. There's quite well-marked trails. And yoga and wellness is also sort of an up-and-coming interest around the lake as well. Accommodation options, again, they range from very simple 3-star all the way up to deluxe. Casa de Palopo is probably one of our favourites. That's in San Antonio, Palopo here. Again, this is a retreat that really focuses on wellness and yoga. They've got beautiful accommodation, as you can see, and a pretty lovely pool with an amazing view out over the lake and volcanoes. Santiago is located in this Santiago Atitlan, a very traditional village. This is a 3-star property, very simple as you can see from the rooms, but quite a unique setting and really pretty gardens and so on. You get these little individual casitas, which is the accommodation style. And then Laguna Lodge as well, so that one is located in Santa Cruz. And again, probably a good 4-star resort here. You can see they all sort of favour the kind of traditional style construction, so it's quite, yeah, very pretty accommodation. Next up is Flores and Tikal, which is probably the one thing in Guatemala that everybody has heard of. Tikal is certainly the most spectacular Mayan ruins in Central America. Huge site, and really amazing that it's completely surrounded by and a lot of it's covered by the jungle. So while you're walking around the ruins, you hear howler monkeys, you see the coloured birds, toucans and parrots and so on. So it's really, apart from the ruins, which are obviously amazing, it's a really evocative site. This town here is Flores, which is about an hour and a half from the ruins of Tikal. The airport that you fly into from Guatemala City is located just outside this town. And to give you a sense of where everything is, there's the town of Flores. It's actually out on this little tiny peninsula here, which you can't really see because of the word. And then coming around to El Remate, this is the area where a lot of the hotels are based, and then about 40 minutes north of here you've got the ruins of Tikal. There's 2 flights with Avianca daily from Guatemala City up to Flores. It takes about an hour, and because they're very early morning and very late evening flights, you can actually, if people are pressed for time, fly up in the morning, do a full day tour of Tikal overnight, and then fly back to Guatemala City the following day. It's not necessarily the way we would normally recommend doing it, but it can be done if you're pushed for time. Accommodation options in and around Tikal, we would normally try and have people as close to the ruins as possible because it is best to be there early morning because of the heat and because there's fewer people at that time. So tourist class are really great options. The Jungle Lodge, which is right inside the entry of the national park. From there you can pretty much walk to the ruins, so that's certainly location-wise one of the best. And then a little bit further afield you've got the Camino Real Tikal, which is probably a 4-star. And La Lancha, which is owned by the Francis Ford Coppola family, and they've got everything ranging from quite simple 3-star rooms right up to deluxe, amazing casitas and with plunge pools and so on. So a good range of accommodation options. There are also some hotels in Flores town itself, but because of the distance to the ruins, it's not usually the first choice of accommodation for us. Some of the places you probably haven't have heard of, but are definitely worth mentioning to clients who like to get a little bit off the beaten track. Semuc Champay is probably one of the most amazing places I've ever been anywhere in the world. You see it's this sort of series of natural limestone pools. It is absolutely stunning and spectacular, and the region around there has heaps of caves, and just the topography and the geography of the area is really unique. That is the town that I mentioned, I don't know if you remember, Coban, which is right in the middle of the country. So unfortunately it's a real pain in the neck to get to. It's about 6 or 7 hours drive from Guatemala City, about the same to Flores, and probably 5 or 6 hours to Huehuetenango. So it really is off the beaten track, but we can do it. I've done it for people before with the private driver and guide. The driver's obviously quite scenic, but it is a long day, so as long as passengers are aware of that, I think it's a really unique and special destination. Huehuetenango is, as I said, one of the highland villages where it's really a gateway to some of the most traditional villages in Guatemala. Almost every village has its own particular style of dress, and that's where you see these sort of the ladies in the bottom corner here. Yeah, really unique and special kind of market towns, each with their own dress, with their own market days, and yeah, very unique. Most of these villages also speak a Mayan dialect rather than Spanish as well, so Spanish would be their second language. And then the other thing that hardly anybody knows about Guatemala is that they also have a Creole Caribbean culture on the coast, just bordering Belize, and it's called the Garifuna culture. And basically the people here speak Creole English. They look very different to the rest of the Guatemalan population, and here you've got, apart from the interesting culture, you've also got the Rio Dulce, which has a lot of wildlife lodges and really good opportunities for wildlife spotting as well. So this is probably the most popular Guatemala itinerary that we try and recommend people to do. As I said, starting in Antigua, so when people are arriving straight down to the city of Antigua, a couple of days there. There's a really interesting coffee cooperative nearby they can visit called As Green As It Gets, and that's a really good community organisation that supports local coffee producers. There's also a Pacaya volcano which people can climb. There's street food tours we can do there. So there's a lot of different options in Antigua if people have the time. I think it's worth having 3 nights there. Afterwards we can transfer them across to Lecatitlan, and that's quite a nice drive going through Comalapa and also Iximche ruins. And then again, if people have the time, I think 3 nights is fantastic to have at Lecatitlan, but for those who are a bit pressed, then 2 is the minimum, I'd say. On Lecatitlan, a lot of people really like to visit Santiago to because they have a very traditional Maya beliefs that come through in the local church and a lot of the traditions there. San Juan de la Laguna also has a really interesting women's textile cooperative as well, so that's quite a low-key day trip for people to do. Again, as I said, if you've got more active clients, they can do volcano climbing, they can do kayaking, hiking, pretty much, yeah, whatever they like, really. From Tecatitlan, you can visit Chichicastenango, which is the most famous market in Guatemala. Very, very colourful, huge amount of goods on display. You know, you've got obviously the fruit and vegetable section. They've got a massive array of handcrafts and textiles and so on. The market's only on Wednesdays and Sundays, so it's important if passengers are really interested in visiting that you obviously build the itinerary around those days. And because that's quite an early morning market, but from there we can transfer them straight to Guatemala Airport and fly to Flores on that evening flight. In and around Flores, as well as Tikal, you also have Yaxha ruins, which we would normally recommend doing before you go to Tikal, because obviously Tikal is the main event. Yaxha is nice to do as a sunset tour, so you go in the late afternoon, you climb to one of the top of the biggest temples in the park, and there you can see the sunset over the jungle. You get drinks and snacks at the top of the temple, and that's a really, yeah, a very relaxing and really special tour before going out to Tikal the following day on a full day. Because it is, even at the best of times, it's really hot and humid in this part of the country, so if passengers are travelling in the wet season, so May to October, definitely do mention that the humidity and the heat does, it does become quite an issue, so they really do need to be on a very early morning tour to escape the worst of that. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, we've got a brand new brochure out combining South and Central America this time, as well as Antarctica and Cuba. So if you haven't got a copy of that in the office, please feel free to either give us a call and we can send one out to you, or you can order those through Toll. It took quite a few months to put it together, so we're pretty happy to have it out there. So yeah, please do get in touch if you'd like to receive a brochure. So that pretty much concludes the webinar for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me know if you've got any questions about anything that we've spoken about, or you can also email us later on if there's something that you feel like I've forgotten. And finally, the question to go into the chance to join us on our next FMIL. What is the colourful bird that features on Guatemala's national currency? That's a Google question for you. Yeah, please let me know if you've got any questions, and otherwise we look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thank you.